As we drive out of Switzerland into Austria, there are 4 police who just look at us and we continue on our way. It really is unbelievable. Years ago when I came to Switzerland, probably 10-15 years ago, they were still not in the EU, and actually you got stopped at the borders. You had to show your passport. They even had insisted on when you were in Switzerland you had to have a sticker that said you were allowed to use the Swiss motorways. Now you leave Switzerland, you go into Switzerland, nobody pays any attention at all. And what I wonder is why with Brexit now is all this fuss going on about the channel? Why can't people go in and out of England just like they go in and out of the EU? Welcome to show 40 of A Victim Bites Back. And driving from Switzerland into Germany, actually through Austria into Germany, again I was astonished by how little regulations. There was really no border at all. At least going from Switzerland into Austria, there were a few police officers standing around, but that was all. They weren't stopping anybody. It's very different to when I was last in Switzerland, probably about 10 years ago, in the car, and it was quite a palaver getting through. You had to show your passport and stuff like that. Now, nothing at all. So why is it? Well, I suspect it's because after many years of not being in the EU, the Swiss suddenly discovered the whole Brexit thing was actually pointless. Borders were really not borders in Europe, so they might as well just allow everybody in and out as normal.
And that's what we ought to be doing with the UK, in my opinion.
In the early 2005 or 6 or whatever, I got a call from a lady who, how she got my number, I don't know, who said she worked in a hospice and somebody there had just passed away, and she used to be a singer with me called Tina Harvey. And the lady, the matron or the nurse, said she'd asked her to track me down and to please tell me that the recording with me period of her life was the happiest time she'd ever had. That was Tina Harvey, and sadly passed away, I suppose, now about 20 years ago. Anyway, she was a brilliant singer, and I'll play you some more of her songs later on in the show.
I've said before that Munich is one of my favourite cities in the world, definitely my favourite place in Germany. Mainly because it's full of trees and rivers and the extraordinary Bavarian architecture that you find around every corner as you walk about the city.
I always used to stay here in the Hilton in the Park Hilton, and I used to love looking out of my window and sitting on the balcony having a morning coffee and looking at the river flowing by and breathing in the air, which of course had all the freshness that the trees and the water provided. And then I'd go downstairs and literally 1 or 2 minutes walk away and I was in the Englischer garden, where you could have beer and sausages and stuff, and this strange sort of Chinese kind of monument building in the middle of it. I'll show you more of this later on. But these are the places I tend to stroll around in Munich, and then if I felt like it, I'd go shopping or pop into the main square in the middle of town and take a look at all the gorgeous flowers and the tourists walking past and the unbelievable Baroque, or I think you could call it Gothic, or actually, of course, Bavarian architecture with gargoyles and gremlins and statues and the most extraordinary stuff everywhere.
One of the things I've noticed about the Germans is they are a very obedient race. I used to say to my German friends, and I have quite a few, that's why Hitler emerged, because quite simply people voted for people, and when they voted for them, they then obeyed the laws and the rules that those people made, almost unquestioningly. I find it rather strange, but it is very much a Germanic characteristic. I remember at one point I was in the Hauptbahnhof, which is the main station in Munich, where I used to go every day to collect the British papers, which arrived there early each morning. And having got the papers, I came out of the station and there were a huge crowd there. And I wondered what the crowd was about. And I wandered through it to get to where I needed to go. And there was a main road and the traffic lights were jammed on stop on red. And not a single German Munich person was crossing the road because the light said red. And there was a huge jam of people on both sides of the road, with no cars going either way at the time. So I, of course, shrugged my shoulders because I like to disobey as many rules and regulations as I possibly can anyway, and just walked across because that's where I was going to. And I could actually hear a gasp of horror amongst the assembled Germans as they saw this strange man breaking the law, crossing the road on a red pedestrian light.
Have you seen your mother, baby, standing in the shadow? Have you had another baby, standing in the shadow? I'm glad I opened your eyes. The have-nots would have tried to freeze you in ice. Have you seen your brother, baby, you give all your sympathy to mine. Tell me a story about how you adore me. We live in the shadow, we see through the shadow, we glimpse through the shadow, we tear at the shadow, we hate in the shadow, and love in the shadow, and life. Have you seen your mother, baby, standing in the shadow? Have you had another baby standing in the shadow? Where have you been all my life? Talking about all the people who would try anything twice.
I suppose I shouldn't really be that pro-German, since my father was in a prisoner of war camp during the war, and in fact I was conceived in 1944 in order to celebrate the end of the Second World War. But I do like Germany, and I generally like the Germans. They're a very attractive race, although they tend to get a bit hefty in old age. They're sort of blonde and gorgeous, just as the Italians are slightly darker and gorgeous. But both races, I think because of diet, tend to put on weight and get pretty hefty whilst fairly young. I suppose in the Germans it's the case of all the sausages, beer and potatoes they eat. Sadly, I love all three too.
Which brings me back to the old people crossing borders. I've gone on forever that I think all countries should open all borders. These days, humanity is of more importance than individual countries and races. I can't understand racism anyway. I can't understand religiousism or sexism. Human beings are human beings, and we ought to look after them all. We shouldn't allow them to drown on oceans or get incarcerated or get sent to Rwanda or whatever. Every country should be open, should look after people who want to come and live there, should encourage them, and should watch them grow and develop the country as that happens as well. I'm a huge fan of that. Mind you, I have to admit, I can't find anybody else who agrees with me. Everybody else seems to feel nationalism is a very good thing. So I'm sitting in Munich eating my hot dogs and looking at all the people around, generally enjoying the atmosphere. As I said, it really is one of my favourite cities, and I'm a great fan of beautiful cities, good, nice people, and most of the people here I find, most people in the world I find to be generous and nice and tolerant and kind and helpful. There are very few bad apples, and the bad apples there are, you ignore.
You become a part of me.
That was a really sweet phone call to get from the matron or nurse at the hospice telling me that Tina had sent me a message all these years later that the happiest time in her life had been recording with me. One of the sad things about getting older, and I'm nearly 80, is that so many of your old friends and lovers and family die. As you get older, you keep hearing news every day that somebody else you knew terribly well when you were younger has passed away. Well, I suppose that's life, or not, as the case may be. I'm looking at Munich and the fantastic Olympia Park, which is a wonderful place to visit. As I've been telling you, I come here an awful lot. In fact, it's my favourite place in Munich to visit, and I've been visiting it for decades and decades.
I think I've been coming to the swimming pool in the Olympia Park ever since they built it, which was basically in 1972 for the Munich Olympic Games that year. And I think they built most of the park then. There's a huge stadium and all sorts of athletic places. It's actually a wonderful park anyway. But the pool is marvellous. It's absolutely huge, of course, Olympic-sized, with the diving pool and everything else. The only thing is I really like swimming in outdoor pools and in the sunshine, which is sometimes difficult to have the two together. But here in Munich, it is basically an indoor pool, although you can go outside and sunbathe if the weather's nice. But it is spectacularly clean and gorgeous ever since they opened it. And as I said, I've been coming here since, I suppose, 1972 or 1973. And it's a great place to swim. I mean, it takes forever going up and down the lanes. Very good for me, keeps me healthy. One of the reasons why I'm so fucking gorgeous.
I started the series Entertainment USA back in the 1980s because they approached me, the BBC, to do a chat show. And I said, no, that format is tired and old. I want to do something different. Well, this is a bit the same for Online World in 2023. I thought perhaps a show that showed various travel locations, gave lots of opinions, played some interesting music, was a sort of combination of Top of the Pops and Entertainment USA and other sort of shows that might catch on and entertain you. A Victim Bites Back doesn't seem to have done so. We're going now for 40 weeks and we've had very limited viewership, and the people who like it tend to watch it, so we get several thousand each episode watching it, but not much more than that. It hasn't really caught on. I'd like to expand it to put it on terrestrial television as well and include much more different kinds of music and perhaps make it about a half hour every show. But that doesn't seem to be going to happen unless you spread the word. Anyway, it's all over to you.
Do you notice anything different about me? Yes, I've changed the colour of the peak of my cap. I'm such a funny, different person. See you in episode 41.